So Kings is getting ready to talk a lot about parent involvement. When parents come to the table, they've been talking about their child for years, right? They know all their favorite foods. They know where they want to go on their travel destinations. They know those things. But what about these new dreams and ideas that they're like, ooh, I don't know, or that's something new I've never heard my youth say before. Those squeagle doors and those shumalakas. Who can talk best about that? Youth can talk best about that. And we have to be able to listen and hear what the other person's saying. And for a lot of you, that was taking notes about a complete stranger, and making sure you heard all of that. And we really want to encourage you guys as you're working with parents and youth to do that. Of course, we should always do that, but also encourage parents to do that when they're listening to their young person. Let them actually hear what they want to say. And then vice versa. Sometimes our youth need to hear where the parent's coming from too. That wisdom piece that we were talking about yesterday. Doesn't mean they have to follow it, but they can hear it. So really kind of working together, but it all kind of breaks down to that communication. And we all feel really warm and comfortable and cozy when we're talking about something we know. And then when it starts to get uncomfortable is when it gets good. That's the good stuff. You want to be in the uncomfortable spot.
There's also a willingness to understand that comes with listening. Are you willing to understand something that you don't yet understand? So keeping that in mind when talking to parents, keeping that in mind when talking about youth.
Perfect.
I like it.
All right, if you need to go back, we'll make you unsqueagle your doors.
All right, guys, we're a little crunched for time, so please let me know if I need to slow down, but we are going to wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, through parents and youth transition. All right, so I was tasked with coming up for the secret allies of youth transition, because that's what I believe parents are. So first, we need to recognize this, and I need to say it because I am a youth, but it's also really important for you guys to know. This presentation is meant to provide you with an added resource for youth with disabilities in IL. It is not to make you forget that there is power in the youth. There is power in the youth movement, and they are their own advocates first and foremost. They're also not parents are also not a consumer. They're a resource for your consumers. And they might be consumers if they're parents, but keep in mind who you're focusing on when you're providing these services. This is a quote directly taken from the NICL website. It says, independent living means that we demand the same choices and control in our everyday lives. Parents are not necessarily going to make those choices for our youth. And it's important to keep in mind the balance of that. So, getting in the door. Parents may provide potential transportation for their children. They may provide permission slips for centers if they're under 18, in getting into schools, working with other organizations. And they also might provide detailed notes about their child's strengths, their weaknesses, their disability. They also might not provide that. You have so many different levels of parent engagement. So parents don't necessarily provide a warm and supportive, accepting environment for their child. They may not want nothing to do with their child or their disability. They may not have definitions for their children's disability or goals. You should not let a parent completely define your consumer's goal if that consumer is a youth or an adult, but specifically someone who is trying to make their way and create their own identity. They're also not going to provide a step-by-step instruction on how to make their child independent. Some parents, if they're a helicopter parent, may try and make that step-by-step instructional guide. You should not let them. Make sure you are always involving the youth while you're involving the parents. So some parents may come into your office and say, we have so much information, we're so well informed, we need this, this, and this from your center, that's it. Reality of that happening? Probably slim. So here are some of the things that they're probably going to want to know. And they might be coming to you first, they might be coming to you last, but it's still good for you to have this information on hand so you can share it with them. What is an IEP? What does it involve? How do I get one for my child? What is IL? How can they support their child in the IL philosophy? What is the IL philosophy? What are other resources, such as Vogue Rehab, such as other community supports? How can I support my child as they transition out of school? What are the things that I can be doing as a parent proactively to help support my child? What is disability pride? How can I encourage this? How can I make my child feel loved and special, but also proud of who they are and proud of their identity? They're probably going to want to know about internship programs, employment programs, adaptive driving programs, if that's one of their goals, other transportation options. Also, the dignity of risk and loss. This has been mentioned a couple of times today, but parents don't naturally want to see their child fail. That is still a great teaching technique. And so you need to make sure that parents understand that this is a learning experience, not only for them, but for the youth as well. So, how do we reach parents? How do you reach parents to reach youth? Some suggestions are getting in touch by talking to your schools, getting onto their website. If they're under 18, uploading a permission slip so that they can come to your center, so that you can talk with them, so that if they need to go, off-site for a driving evaluation or something, you have permission from the parents for that. Getting in the newsletter, reaching parents through, emails through the school or emails through other community-oriented events. Speaking with the Parent-Teacher Association. Great off the bat, just say, hey, we'd love to present, at one of your meetings. When's the next one? Can we do that? Outside of school, contact community centers with parent groups, YMCA. If you have, different community centers, different youth groups, church groups was mentioned before. And reaching out to disability organizations SILCs have ties with. If I'm not saying anything right now and you have a tie with a business or local organization in your area, reach out to them. So how to support parents who in turn support their youth. Talking to them about the IL philosophy. What is IL? What are you providing? What are the goals? What is the whole power behind the movement? Many parents have concern for their child's success, so remind them in the growing and changing terminology. Many people prefer different things when in terms of regarding and relating to their disability. So what does their child prefer? Create a parent peer-to-peer support group so that other parents with children with disabilities can be a resource to each other. Some parents, especially if their child's disability is relatively new or they don't know how to understand that, find great value in talking to other parents who have children, even with completely different disabilities, but about how they're handling it, about how they're coping, about cool tips and tricks. How do you where do you buy equipment? Where do you get services? What is the best restaurant that's accessible in the local area? Little things to big things can add up, and they really find value in this. The same way you reach out to your consumers, tailor your style of communication to parents. Some parents are going to have absolutely no idea about the terminology, such as IEP, such as OVR, such as pre-transition employment services. So what does that look like in tailoring your language and tailoring your communication style? Because everyone is going to have a different communication style. Creating a space where they feel their child is comfortable and getting help and resources. This is especially important to parents whose youth are still underage. Are they comfortable in your center? Are they comfortable with you providing their services? Referring them to school resources, such as guidance counselors, special ed coordinators, local college programs, and camps. One of the best things that my parents did for me, my parents are wonderful, by the way, shout out, hi, Mom and Dad, about getting me involved was getting me involved with older people with disabilities in my area. That's incredible. But my parents wouldn't have known that if they didn't reach out to the disabled community and said, hey, what can we do? And so that's really important for you to provide even just like ideas or suggestions for parents. Resources that you can use specifically are the peer support groups, like I mentioned. Try to include the IL philosophy in these events versus special needs parents. That is not the IL movement. That is not the IL way. We are not looking to provide, inspiration porn. We are looking to provide support and services. So parent engagement centers and family engagement centers, those are kind of region by region. Some of them are in your area, some of them may not, but it's an added resource. Most states have a family engagement news and contributions form. And what it is it allows parents and different organizations to upload basically a newsletter, an online newsletter, to talk about what services are in the area, what activities are going on. And that's super tailored to location, so that's a really good way for parents to get involved or for SILs to get involved. Potential mentoring with a similar disability in your SIL and SILC. If you have a young person that comes in and says, hey, I have XYZ disability, and I'm a little bit lost in the way, setting up them as a youth and then the parent as well with a possible mentor in your area that says, okay, they have similar struggles, would be a great opportunity for them to have a positive influence. So my mini equation for success is engaging schools, engaging parents, engaging youth or students, and IL services equal youth transition. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Sorry, I was distracted. You want to take questions?
Yeah, I can take questions. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Sue has a comment.
Tim, you better sit here and tell me when that flashes.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, y'all. My name is Sue Fager. I work for the Colorado Developmental Disabilities Council. I've had my foot in two worlds for a very long time. One world is parent, trainer, and sibling of a big brother who lives with a significant disability. The other world is independent living. And I was a little disappointed, frankly, to see the slide that talked about what parents don't offer in terms of support for their young people. That might be true for some families. I don't think it's true for a lot, though. So I really encourage you, as you begin thinking about reaching out to families, if you're not already doing it, to engage families one-on-one and find out their special education journey, and to think about what special education teaches families. It's not a strength-based provision of service. It's a deficit. And so families grow up thinking about their young people in the medical model. These kids are broken. We have an IEP to fix them. Families spend a lot of time advocating for their young people, and in that way, I think center staff and families are similar. They've got that advocacy journey down. So I really encourage you to reach out to families and talk with them and ask them to share their stories, like Rick was talking about so eloquently at lunch today. There are stories out there, and I really want to see SILs and families collaborate better than we have in the past, and to move away from this we're hitting heads. Families won't let their kids be self-determined. They just don't know how. And so that's the beautiful thing I think that independent living centers can bring to families is, well, we've got the resource that you need. We've got adults living with disabilities, and families need to know how to dream and advocate for that. Okay, I could go on, but I'm not going to. So thanks, everybody.
We've run into a few parents who are completely disengaged at this point. And if anybody has tips about how to get them re-involved, I can give a real quick example of a mother and her daughter, and the mother was on the phone texting, not wanting to be involved in our, it was just a discussion. It wasn't an IEP meeting. Thanks.
Does anyone want to respond to that?
Was this a discussion at the school? How old was the daughter, if you don't mind me asking? So I'm just wondering if maybe that was just the parents' way of trying to let her be, you know, more independent, but I don't know.
I think we've all had experiences like that. I remember a parent telling us, I've taken care of my son for the last 20 years, now it's your turn. It's sometimes the thing we face, and the best thing we can do is support the consumer, right? Support that young adult in the best way we can, and maybe provide other resources. And it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, I think it's a reality we've probably all faced.
I have had very similar conversations with families, and I think I try to operate from the place of assuming that anyone I come in contact with at any given moment is doing the best that they can do in that moment. So to reserve the judgment and to reserve how I might handle the situation or how I assume they should be handling and how they should be advocating for their child, because I don't know all of the steps that they have walked in their process with their child. So in that situation, perhaps following the meeting, I would just outreach to that parent, try to connect them with some support resources, or see if there's anything in their particular life that they need support for, because a lot of our families, parents have disabilities themselves that are not, and they're not receiving any types of support for those things that would just make their life a little bit easier and make them more successful. So I think to just try really, really hard to reserve judgment, even when it's really easy to just be like, what are you doing? Get off your phone.
I very much appreciate those last comments that you just made. Thank you. As a parent of a child with a disability who's 26, I entered the IL movement when she was 13, actually 12. I kept hearing the word transition, had no idea what it meant, and I kept hearing it from every single person who was in her life at that time at the school system. I went to the special ed director. I said, tell me about transition, I need to learn, tell me, I didn't know. And she proceeded to reach up onto her top shelf, dusted off a 3-ring binder, handed it to me in a thick 3-ring binder, handed it to me, told me to go home and read it. That was my education. I passed the Freedom Resource Center, which is the center that I now work at. And I'm like, I gotta stop there, because I knew a person who worked there, didn't know what it was. And I cried for 2 hours. That was my introduction. So without the Center for Independent Living, I don't know where she would be today. I'm gonna stop because I'm gonna start to cry. But parents don't have the education they need. And we're here to give it to them, and the support. So no passing judgment. I appreciate that. Thank you.
With working with parents, one of the issues I've ran into at my particular center is we've got some referrals of young folks who have turned 18 and they've been placed under full guardianships, and their relationship with their guardian is very combative, and the guardian and the consumer completely disagree about what they want for their lives. And as much as possible, I don't want to, as an advocate, I want to try to resolve that without someone losing their natural supports, but at the same time I feel very limited as an advocate in some ways with the way those rights have been removed under the guardianship, and I just didn't know if anybody had any advice And I always try to give the guardian the benefit of the doubt and things like that, but it still is just so difficult to work through those situations, and I haven't had much success.
Time for maybe one or two more comments or questions. Okay. Oh.
I wanted to respond to the earlier comment about the parent that was texting during a discussion. And having been in the IL movement from way back when, a lot of parents have had to fight with the school system for access for their children. And I just wonder if maybe at some point they're so alone and so exhausted that it was maybe a cry for help too, in a kind of an odd way, but just they didn't have any more ideas or any more resources, and we're hoping for some support and help.
I saw two hands at the same time here. I think we might need to close this box.
I was just going to say that I know sometimes I play on my phone when I'm trying to think, and or sometimes when I don't want to look at the person I'm talking to. So maybe it's more of a coping mechanism than actually that they don't want to be part of the conversation.
Thanks. Okay.
I work with parents all the time. I have a support group for parents, and a lot of times they just have battled the school systems, and they get to a point where they just feel like it doesn't matter, and like an IEP is just not valuable, and they're not actually being heard, and nothing's going to happen, and the kids have the same goals forever, and so I could see where somebody might tap out and be like, this doesn't matter anyway, they're not going to listen to what I say, they've never listened, so maybe.
Great discussion. I think I see some hands that we're going to have to move on. This reminds me so much of some of the conversations with the aging community, right? That a lot of us are dealing with the same issues, and there's some real chasms in terms of language and sometimes even philosophy. And so we need to remember what our values are and not sway from that. But I think it's important to give people a lot of leeway in terms of where they are, in terms of language they might use, and sharing our philosophy and our perspective, because that might be all it is having that conversation, finding that common ground and going from there. So, well, anyway, thanks. I'm glad we had some time for that.